We're going to Antarctica today, and we're going there in order to film emperor penguin chicks. Now, Antarctica is about the size of the United States and Mexico combined. In the winter, though, if you include the ice around the continent, it roughly doubles in size. The Antarctica and the Arctic are not nearly the same. There has been a lot of warming and ice melting in the Arctic. That's less true of the Antarctic. And the Antarctic, in a sense, is two different places. There's a very big difference between the Western Antarctic and the Eastern Antarctic. The Western Antarctic has much less ice, and the Western Antarctic is warmer, and it has a fair number of volcanoes. On the other hand, the Eastern Antarctic has about, well, at maximum point, about 3 miles of ice. And that ice is not melting. There are parts of Antarctica where the ice is melting, mostly in Western Antarctica. But in parts of Eastern Antarctica, the ice is actually slightly expanding. Now, there are a number of anomalies down in Antarctica. One of them has to do with gravitation. A couple of years ago, a satellite checking the Earth's gravity passed overhead, and they discovered a massive gravity object deep in Antarctica. Now, scientists speculate that this might have been a very large meteor, much larger than the meteor that wiped out all the dinosaurs. In fact, this may have been the meteor that caused the Great Dying well before the dinosaurs were even around. There was, before the time of the dinosaurs, a period of massive extinction, much greater than that caused during the extinction event that the dinosaurs were in, and this may very well have been the source of that. There are other theories as well. Some people say it's actually an underground base for UFOs, and a number of people have tied the Nazis into that, and a Nazi base down in Antarctica. But putting that aside, we'll put our money on the big meteorite. Now, that big meteorite is located in eastern Antarctica. Western Antarctica has this long tail on it, and that tail extends up into South America. Actually, in many ways, it's probably just an extension of the Andes mountain chain. That mountain chain extends into Antarctica, and it is actually what divides Western Antarctica from Eastern Antarctica. And the anomaly that I spoke about is on the eastern side. Now, there are some other anomalies as well. For example, the shelf ice has some odd characteristics as well. When the glacier comes down to the shore, it hits the seabed and it grounds, and it hits that seabed and it can't go any further. But over a period of time, often that ice melts a little bit and it becomes shelf ice. That is, there's seawater underneath it. And that shelf ice is much more likely to thaw than the ice where the grounding is. In recent years, there has been less ice grounded far away from the Antarctic continent, and more that is turning into shelf ice. The shelf ice itself has an oddity, and that is it could have a hole in it where the sea is visible through the ice. Well, there is no ice actually.
That's called a polnaya, and the one that's in the Weddell Sea now is about the size of the U.S. state of Maine. And incidentally, it's the Weddell Sea to which we're going. A little while ago, a chunk of the ice shelf in the Weddell Sea broke off. It was huge. The iceberg was actually larger than the size of the U.S. state of Connecticut, but it stayed essentially where it had broken off for a long time. However, the winds now have started to move it, and because part of it is grounded on the ocean floor, it has spun around and will probably eventually join the currents, taking it north.
The polar regions are the coldest, most extreme places on our planet. Winds reach 200 miles an hour and temperatures drop as low as minus 70 degrees centigrade. Only the toughest can survive here.
Antarctica wasn't always frozen. Back during the period of time when there were dinosaurs roaming around, Antarctica's climate was a lot more like California's. So it hasn't always been lifeless. As a matter of fact, you can still see substantial remnants in Antarctica of life that had been there. For example, this is a fossil of a tree. I'm going to outline it so that you can see it a little bit better because it blends in with all the other rocks. But the point is, Antarctica was a lively place at one time. And it was joined up with a lot of other continents like South America and Africa and Australia. And the animals could wander from one place to another. And as a matter of fact, we're pretty sure that sauropods, the kind of dinosaur that's an awful lot like Brontosaurus, those long-necked dinosaurs migrated from place to place, from South America perhaps to Antarctica, and Antarctica to Australia. And we're pretty sure that they made that trek because we found their footprints. At the time when Australia was attached to Antarctica, it became a very narrow attachment, not too far from the location where Tasmania and so forth is in eastern Australia. And we found sauropod tracks in a particular cove where that land bridge still existed.
Antarctica was much warmer during the geologic past than present day. And we know this from plant fossils and evidence of pollen from offshore. There are very few places, of course, where you can get a fossil record in Antarctica because so much of the continent is covered by ice. But we have these little windows of information where the record is preserved, and some of the best sediments to answer that question come from deep sea drilling.
This is a view of the South Pole 120 million years ago, and you can see here is Antarctica, very much close to the South Pole where it is today. But at that time, Australia was joined onto this margin, and India was joined into here. So this little corner down here records these two events, and hence the reason we are here. Also, what is critical for today's climate is the opening of Australia and Antarctica, creating an ocean here that creates the Antarctic circumpolar current, which largely dictates the climate that we have on the Earth today.
Now, one of the curious things about Antarctica is that it has always been at the South Pole. Even when it was part of Gondwana land, it was part of the South Polar region. And we know that because there are indications in South America, Africa, and Australia and other places that indicate that at one time they were in the southern polar region as well.